Hello, this is an assessment for restoration or reconditioning of a Gors Kallmann upright piano made in 1909. It's got a very attractive walnut case and generally in good condition on the outside. I think those are original sconces. There's a bit of beading missing at the top here, and there's some broken beading as well at the front here. We can see there's a broken beading. Let's see if there's any other damage. Seems otherwise to be in good condition. There's a bit of veneer missing on the toe there. We can make that good. We can re-veneer the whole of the front, but generally speaking we try and fill that in and make it good. Unless you want the whole piano repolished, obviously that's an option, but it does look very handsome. I think this right hand pedal is very worn, the sustain pedal. That's largely because the angle was too high up. It's now 7 centimeters from the floor, which is like a normal modern piano. Could do with being lower still. Lots of pedals are a lot lower and much nicer in a way. And it's had new casters on, so that's why the pedals are lower, I think, than they were originally, which is good. With lower pedals, much more comfortable to play, and there's still 62 centimeters legroom, so it's a reasonable amount of legroom, slightly more than a Yamaha U1 for instance. Now it's got 2 music desks, as a lot of high quality German pianos have, and this one's missing its book holders here, so we could replace those. There's a bit of blistering here of the polish. That's quite common with walnut. I'll have to polish the whole piano to make that look any better, I think. Now it's an 85 note keyboard missing the top 3, as a lot of older pianos are. Here's a modern Welmer which has got 88 keys, as all new pianos tend to have. If you want a smaller piano, this Kemble's got 85 keys. It's one of our preferred makes of small piano. The key tops are very dirty. That's largely because they need buffing and won't attract the dirt if they're shinier. So that's something we do, just buff the keys. That'll take the dirt off and also prevent the dirt from coming back as well. Or rather, don't tend to get so dirty if they're shiny. That's come with this piano stool that's very wobbly. That's because it's got screwed on legs. This is the cheaper range of piano stool that comes flat packed, and you have to screw the legs on and assemble it. And as you can see, this is very wobbly. The spanners that they provide with these aren't really man enough for the job. You need a big spanner and just tighten this as much as possible. And you can over tighten it and break the leg, but normally if you just tighten as much as you can, as we do with our new stools if they're the basic ones, then you'll find that they don't tend to go loose. Now, as with a lot of Gors Kallmann uprights, it's an overdamper piano. That means the dampers are over the top of the hammers. There's the hammers there, and there's the dampers. So the sustain tends to not cut off so well, and especially at the top here, it doesn't cut off very well at all. So it cuts off very cleanly. The damping's a lot better. The problem is with an overdamper, the damper's too near the top of the string. As you can see in this case, the last damper there is very close to the top of the string, and it dampers remarkably well considering it is so close to the top. If we compare that to the Gros Kallmann, you see it dampens immediately and cuts off, and it has more dampers too. So back to the Gors Kallmann. Those are the same notes played as I played on the Gros Kallmann. Now it is possible to replace this with an underdamper system. You have to replace the whole action, including the keys, and put capstans on. It's really extremely long job, and therefore obviously expensive, unfortunately. But we've done it twice. We've done it with a Bluthner upright piano that was also overstrung and underdamped, and an Ibach, which is the other high quality make. So the 3 makes in the UK that you find of overdampers that are really good quality are Bluthner, Ibach, and also Gors Kallmann. I may have missed out a make or two, so please do look at a comment if you're a tuner, but they're the main ones, I think, the main common ones in. And obviously that was acceptable, otherwise they wouldn't be able to sell them. Perhaps nowadays we tend to want a lot more cut off with jazz and so on, but a more romantic sound. It doesn't matter if it's stained slightly. Now the action's all original, I think, although someone has done some work on it in the past. They've numbered, you can see the numbering here, which is not original, so they would have taken the action apart perhaps, and maybe they'd replace the tapes, but I think they are original return tapes, so maybe they just took them off without them breaking. If you take these ones off, they tend to break once they get to that sort of age, then you've got to replace them. But it's in good condition generally. It's got a rocker system for adjustment, and we do need to regulate this, so we'd have to regulate the rocker system here, and it's a little bit more complicated than the normal capstan system. You have to screw this one down if you want to take up some slack, and you have to well, obviously screw that one out a bit first. I think that's pretty obvious really. There is some need to do that. If we look at the dampers here, sorry, if you look at, if I lift the dampers up first of all, and if I press C, which I've done, it responds immediately, whereas B, you can see the bottom part moves first, so there's quite a lot of slack in the action, and that needs taking up. Otherwise it just doesn't feel very responsive. There's the Gors Kallmann, and you just have to put something to regulate in the hole and the capstans there, and just turn them, and that's much more simple. Now, another very important item to regulate on this piano is when the dampers lift off. You see this damper system here has a what we call bird cage very often in the trade, and that's quite heavy, that weight, and so therefore that weighs down here and feels very heavy. Not only is the action a little bit heavy anyway, and we'll have to lubricate the balance rail here, but also the dampers need regulating. So that one there, it feels a lot lighter now that it's been lifted up a bit, because it doesn't pull off straight away. This one pulls off straight away, and so there's lots of inertia to overcome before and it's very heavy feeling. I would say it's already quite heavy, as we'll see on the worksheet in a minute, but it's even heavier because the damper's being lifted off, so it's extremely heavy action. This is regulated by simply turning the wire here. You may need to loosen that screw a bit first, otherwise you could break the wire, but this one turned all right without loosening the screw. Now, this rail will also need regulating if you do that, because if you can see, that's the unregulated one, which is lifting off too early, but it's flush against that rail, and the one that I've regulated, middle C, it bounces, and you can feel that bounce in your finger. So you need to, fortunately there's regulation on this one, so you can just take that down a bit. Now, overstrung overdampers are awkward to tune, because normally when you tune a piano you put the wedge in here, and it's easy to fit in, but you'll see what I mean when I go to the overdamper. So with the overdamper you can't very clearly see, you have to listen to the string like that and then put it into the string there. You get used to it, but the main problem is that string there goes at an angle, so it's difficult to relate it to the actual tuning pin that it belongs to. Now, there are a very great number of overdampers in the UK, so I thought this might be useful to spend some time looking at it. This one pulls forward. There's slight variation in the way that they are, and this one pulls forward. I don't think it's going to hold for us. Bluthner is very kind. They hold at about this angle here, but I wanted to look at the hammers, and we can see that they're quite worn. I've turned the action round, and you can see it's quite a lot of mildew here. It doesn't seem to be affecting the piano. The hammers are not too tight or anything, but it's an indicator it has been in the dampish spot at some stage. The action's in pretty good condition. Dampers, by the way, don't try and replace these. The felt is, well, you might like to try, but I wouldn't recommend it. I know someone who did, and it didn't work very well. There's quite a hard felt that they put on these top ones here, so it's not sensible to change that unless you've got a similarly hard felt. It's really hard to get them right. I don't think that these will be improved at all with replacement, and these the same again here. I wouldn't try replacing those. It's too risky. Seem to have been a bit of rust here. There might be a bit twanging on the strings. That might need smoothing off of it, but I wouldn't play around too much with the dampers if they're working well, as these are. They're probably as good as you're going to get. There's lots of mildew there, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the action at all. They're immediately lubricating these. We'll have to look at that. And the client particularly mentioned about the tone of the piano. Now, they are quite soft, these hammers, and we could reface them and reshape them and try and voice them is a little bit brighter, I think. They tend to be a bit on the mellow side. It's a naturally mellow piano compared to a new piano anyway, so that's important to know. You're never going to get this terribly bright. If we replace the hammers, we could actually get them maximum brightness, and that's obviously an option to do. It's obviously quite costly to do that, but certainly would get a better result than trying to reshape these. If anyone in the trade's watching this and knows anything about Adlexo, I think Berlin 4433839, be really grateful if you could let us know. It would be great to learn. Now, looking at the worksheet, there were quite a few items that I think need attention. So the hammers are important. So reface or voice or replace. Replacing will be the better option, certainly, if you want to get a good tone. It's very mellow sounding, and we'll listen to it in a minute. And looking along here, so we've got some other items here. It's good that they've changed the casters, because that's brought the pedals down. The sustain pedal is very worn. The damping, that's really important because it's very heavy at the moment. It's very important to get that regulated, and also regulate the stock rail then afterwards is important too. And the key dip is very low on the whole. We'll just have a look at that. So I meant that the measurement is low, so 9.5 to 10.5 should be really 10.5 or 11, I think, for this piano will be suitable. So if we use a key dip measure, you'll be able to see that this is 11 millimeters, by the way. So if we look at that, so it's quite a lot less. That's probably 10 millimeters, I would think. That one there, the same. And there's varied. I did find one that was 9.5. So let's say it needs to go down by at least 1 millimeter, and it doesn't feel right. You don't get enough sense of control if the key dip's not great enough, just not going down far enough. Electronic keyboards tend to be 11 millimeters, so it feels particularly shallow if you play on a piano like this. The main thing that improves the playability, apart from the hammers, is the regulation. It needs a full regulation, really, especially the rockers we mentioned before, dampers, let off. Replacing the book holders is, well, that's not regulation, that needs doing as well. And some centre pins were loose as well. There's quite a lot of work to do on the piano and it will become a wonderful instrument once it's done. So the key weighting here should be, as we mentioned many times, so I brought that down to 56 by lubricating the centre rail, balance rail here with talc, but we need to bring it down a bit more probably. If you could let us know what kind of weight you want if you've got a piano that needs restoring. So we would say, just to reiterate again, 52 would be normal, 50 say in the middle there, 52 in the bass, and then 48 in the top treble. But could be slightly lighter than that, slightly heavier if you prefer heavier action. So that's an assessment of a Gors Kallmann upright piano made in 1909, overdamper, and the hammers are a bit on the soft side. So two issues here, the main issues to look at, apart from the regulation which we mentioned. Certainly the regulation is way out and it isn't very comfortable to play at all at the moment. The let off I didn't mention, but it lets off far too early. So once we've regulated everything, it's going to feel a lot more comfortable to play, and in fact a beautiful action, so it should play really well. But the main issue is going to be the damping. If we listen to this and the hammer tone here, and we'll compare that to the Gros Steinweg that we looked at earlier. So here's the Gros Steinweg. The damping is much more immediate, as you'll hear. Also the hammer tone, it's a mellow piano compared to a new piano, but a beautiful tone. Now we can achieve the beautiful tone on the Gors Kallmann. The damping is something you'd have to live with. So back to the Gors Kallmann. You can hear the sound of the notes carries on. It's much better there. Around here, doesn't worry you too much at all. There was a slight echo always though, so that's something you won't be able to change, but It's a beautiful instrument, and I think we can restore the hammer tone by replacing the hammers. Refacing and voicing will improve it. Wherever you play it has a beautiful tone. And a very warm bass sound. So I hope that's been helpful if you've got a piano that you like restored. If it's an overdamper, whatever work we do, it won't be a valuable piano, unfortunately, because of the overdamping, and we can't buy and sell overdampers as a business, but we certainly love them. There's lots of beautiful overdampers. I don't know why they carried on making overdampers right through into, well, later on, Bluthner and Ibach still carried on making overdampers. I think Bluthner till about 1920 or so. I can't quite remember the dates, but there are reasons for doing it. There's certain aspects of the overdamper that are better than an underdamper, but generally for the damping, obviously, you need an underdamper to get better damping. On grand pianos, they have the best damping because the dampers are right on top of where the hammer hits, so they dampen off straight away. A good upright underdamper dampens off very well as well. Has a beautiful tone, so we would love to work on this piano. I think if you refaced and voiced the hammers, it would improve it tremendously. If you replace the hammers, that would be ideal. Then we've got, as it were, new hammers to work on. We can mellow them as much as you want them to be, and we can really make them sound as good as new. Well, they're new hammers, so they will do. But if you've got an overdamper piano and you're interested in having it restored, then please let us know. But please bear in mind that an overdamper piano is never something in the trade that we can buy or sell. Occasionally we'll do one if it's a really high quality one. We did a Bluthner recently. The damping is very good on a top quality overdamper like this. It's almost as good as an underdamper, but we'll still have that sense of ringing on round here. And they have less dampers up here because they don't fit in as well. So I hope that's helpful. Please do write to us, info@robertspianos.com, if you'd like some help.